Hello, this is your Tuesday training today on menopause and women's health. So, we are going to get right to it because we have a lot of information to cover today. So, our agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about what is menopause and hormones, some leading threats to women's health today, and some contributing lifestyle factors that we'll go into detail with. We'll also talk a little bit about nutritional needs, important nutrients to consider to include in your diet, and then a little bit about weight management, and then the effects of menopause on weight. We'll also talk today about physical activity and exercise, and then also stress management. And if you've seen any of my presentations before, you notice that stress management is included in almost every single topic we talk about because it's one of the most important things to manage. Okay, so menopause. So what is it? It's when the ovaries stop releasing eggs and menstruation ends for good. So it's really the full year, 365 days from the last date of a cycle, moving forward to that full year not having a period. The transition is gradual and can involve fluctuating hormone levels and range of symptoms that can occur for several years. And we'll kind of talk a little about this when we talk about the perimenopause stages too. So some symptoms, perceptions, and age of onset can vary from woman to woman and from region to region. So it's kind of interesting to think about like the location of where you are in the world, because depending upon your diet, depending upon your activity, depending upon the region that you're living in, and due to your lifestyle and ethnicity and reproductive history and pregnancy, that can all factor into your onset of menopause. Cultural factors. Each culture and social group views menopause differently, which affects how women think about their own symptoms and experiences. And some social factors to consider. So, when you have other life challenges and there's a lot of changes going on, and you have demands during midlife, it can be difficult to cope with all of these different stressors that you're trying to manage. So we'll talk about how to do that. Okay, so menopause and hormones. Your ovaries produce estrogen. So I've got kind of this chart here as you see in this picture, and then progesterone and androgens. They are signaled to do so by the FSH. So that's your follicle stimulating hormone. Then you have your luteinizing hormone, and this is released from the brain. So these two work together to make sure that these hormones are being released at the right times in the month. So you can see estrogen starts to fall, progesterone falls as well, and then we start to see a steady decline here as things start to level out. So it's really, at menopause, there is relatively high estrogen compared to progesterone. So this is where that off balance is pretty significant, and that's where you start to feel the symptoms that we'll discuss further on. Okay, what is perimenopause? This is where the female hormone estrogen really decreases during perimenopause, and it's a natural transition into menopause. So peri meaning before. And what happens here is we start to see a further decrease in progesterone, and then cycles starting to spread out further, and menstruation then finally ending. And so the full year of then from the last period moving forward 365 days, that then moves into menopause. So it usually begins in the 40s for a woman, but can begin as early as mid-30s. That's very rare. Mostly later stages, even in 50s. I'd say most of the clients that I work with, I still even have women who are in their 50s who are still menstruating. Perimenopause women should be on the lookout for, so some symptoms to take note of. So loss of menstrual cycle, obviously, hot flashes and night sweats, cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, emotional changes. If you start to feel your emotions running haywire, definitely something to discuss with your doctor. If you are feeling vaginal dryness or getting more infections, or I also noticed that in some cases you see more UTI infections, incontinence, urinary tract infections, getting ahead of myself, and then decline in sex drive. And insomnia, lack of sleep. That's a big one. I talk about that a lot with my one-on-one coaching clients because it's so important to get proper sleep, and it impacts our recovery process. It impacts what we eat the next day, cravings, how moody we are. It really impacts a lot of things. So the sleep is something we definitely address early on. So factors accompanying menopause. So we already kind of mentioned some of these, and then now we're going to go into detail. So hot flashes. I love this whole thing. I'm still hot. It just comes in flashes now. Skin temperature can actually increase by up to 8 degrees. So that is significant. So for any of you men watching this out there, if you were to go from a room that all of a sudden is 8 degrees difference, you noticed the difference in temperature. If you go from inside to outside, you notice that it's significant. But imagine that happening within. So that's happening inside your body. Hot flashes often increase before menopause and can peak 2 to 3 years after onset. Some triggers, so this would be like some of the things to think about reducing in your life. Stress, okay, number one, coffee, spicy foods, alcohol, sugar, citrus fruits, reducing your BMI, and really what I mean here is reducing your body fat because BMI is not the whole story here. Smoking, so stop smoking, decrease the size of your meals to help with the reduction in hot flashes, and then increase the intensity of exercise, monitor the intensity of exercise. So you really don't want to overdo it where you're actually increasing your internal temperature to the point where it is being caused by the onset of exercise. And then we'll talk a little bit more about a plant-based diet and associated with fewer hot flashes, and adding in things like yoga, gentle movement, acupuncture, massage, meditation, and exercise, light exercise to, again, really help through these situations when you're having hot flashes. Okay, cardiovascular disease is a big one. We talked about this in our Heart Health Month. So leading cause of death in postmenopausal women, and really one of the leading causes for our nation. But managing stress and meditation can be great preventative measures when it comes to cardiovascular disease. Exercising at least 5 hours per week, consuming plenty of whole plant-based foods, plants for the win when it comes to reducing inflammation and cholesterol, and avoiding processed foods and added sugar, reducing amounts of alcohol, meat, fish, dairy, and eggs. So this you kind of want to look at really the moderation of these foods. So not to say eggs are bad, eggs are not bad, or dairy is bad, dairy is not bad. It's just and for some individuals who can't necessarily consume those things, like if you have an allergy to these foods, then for sure, I mean, obviously that's not going to be in your intake. But we want to also look at this from an open mindset that the meat, fish, and dairy and eggs are kind of the smaller portion, whereas the vegetables are taking the front seat. Drinking tea and water, one of my favorite things to do is to drink some green tea, stay hydrated. All right, let's talk a little bit about osteoporosis. So we're moving quickly here through the topics, but the beauty of this being recorded, you can always go back. So incorporating green leafy vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds, these seem to really be the optimal resources in bone building for calcium. So many times people think, oh gosh, I have to have my cup of milk, or I have to have dairy, or I have to, every single day. And it's really not the case. And we look at osteoporosis and we look at for more of an integrative approach, we're really looking at more of these dark green leafy vegetables to be optimal sources, and the nuts and seeds here for building bone. Also getting enough vitamin D. So if you are someone who spends a good amount of time outside, then you are in luck because it's the most efficient way that your body can create its own vitamin D. There are very limited food sources that have vitamin D in them. And as we get further into our presentation today, we'll talk about what those resources are. But again, most people, especially in the Midwest, are deficient in vitamin D. So it's something definitely, if you have not had your vitamin D levels checked ever, now's the time. Use this as a clue to get that done. Avoid excessive alcohol, salt, carbonated drinks, and caffeine. So again, can start to pull away out calcium from the bones when we have these foods in excess. Check your calcium supplementation. So best to only supplement if not getting enough from food or vitamin D status is adequate. Check magnesium and phosphorus as well with your doctor. So these are things too I look at with my clients from nutrition level, and I put orders through for vitamin D, testing out some of these labs so we can really get a feel for how your body is maintaining its vitamin D levels and calcium levels, and where we need to make changes with your intake. Doing weight-bearing exercises. So resistance training and walking are very beneficial. It creates that compound pressure, not to be confused with too much pressure like on your knees or your joints, but doing weight-bearing exercises really helps to build up bone density. So a lot of times I'll have my clients do heel drops where you're just lifting up on releve onto your toes, and you're just dropping your body down onto your heels, which creates a little bit of it's almost like a ripple effect, but in a way that provides that compound through from your heels through your spine up to your head, and again, helping with building bones. Don't smoke. That's a given, including onions, garlic, chives, leeks, shallots, and scallions. These can help protect your bones and help inhibit cancer development. Great antioxidant levels coming from these foods as well, or I should say these spices and onions. And then avoiding refined sugars and grains. So I put this here, avoiding a lot of times when I talk with my one-on-one coaching clients, we talk about adding value. So many times I don't use the word avoid when I'm talking about being inclusive with your food intake, but we start to displace foods out, meaning example here, refined sugars and grains that aren't helping your body reduce inflammation or causing more inflammation. And we talk about just adding in more of the non-inflammatory type foods. So they don't provide the nutrients, they can help, they actually diminish bone health and can increase inflammation and result in mood swings and fatigue, so especially sugars. And then recent research has suggested that osteoporosis is less a disease and of not enough calcium and more about systemic inflammation. So again, going back to being curious about, okay, we've talked about calcium over and over and over again, but again, is it because you're having excessive amounts of inflammation that's pulling some of the calcium outside of the bones because of the way that your lifestyle is? So here it says, particularly poor mineral absorption, particularly from a diet high in grains and dairy and low in vegetables. So again, low antioxidant intake. Okay, let's talk a little bit about emotional changes, emotional disorders during menopause. So symptoms can include sadness, irritability, anger, panic, anxiety, sense of dread or impending doom, depression, and lethargy. So not to be taken lightly, definitely things to make sure that you're addressing, getting the necessary help that you need, seeing a counselor or just speaking with your doctor about options. To ensure a stable mood, incorporate plenty of whole foods. So this would be where you and I, working one-on-one as your dietitian, would come into play when we're talking about incorporating plenty of whole foods, rich in vitamin C, like peppers, citrus fruits, broccoli, peas, potatoes, and yams. And earlier we said citrus fruits to lessen when you're having hot flashes, but if you're having a consistent intake of vitamin C throughout your day, it's going to help prevent that. Eating foods with B vitamins for the nervous system, like wild rice, brown rice, quinoa. So these are whole food sources, green leafy vegetables, eating whole grains to bump up serotonin, that happy hormone, eating regular meals. So not going too long without a meal, and your meals don't have to be huge, but enough to satisfy the hunger and truly the hunger itself, true hunger. Limiting processed foods, added sugars, alcohol, and caffeine, incorporating omega-3 fats from algae, flax, hemp, chia, and walnuts. So flax seeds, I've been talking a lot about this with my clients, and ground flax seeds are very helpful in this stage when we're talking about menopause, perimenopause, and menopause. But 2 tablespoons of flaxseed used either thrown in a smoothie or created, made into a dressing for a salad is a great way to add in a food that will help to level out your estrogen levels and help that transition as your estrogen starts to decrease. Addressing underlying factors like stress, relationship difficulties, get outside for recreation, get fresh air, get moving and grooving. All right, many women find that counseling is helpful during this period. Midlife is also a period of change. So mood changes can reflect real changes, shifts in priorities or demands in life. Or maybe you just got a grandchild and those are things that are happy, but now you're babysitting and having to relearn how to take care of a youngster, or you are now transitioning into retirement and relearning what to do with your time. So a lot of these underlying issues are definitely things that you can be helped and addressed by a therapist. And we've had several therapists come on into the Move Fully Nourished trainings on our Tuesday trainings and talk to you all about really emotional changes and ways to cope and manage. So definitely take advantage of those resources. Many times these therapists both take insurance, so consider yourself counseling. And then we've also talked with Verbena Counseling and one in St. Charles and one in Geneva. So they also do virtual counseling as well if you're not located in the area. All right, insomnia, lack of sleep. Often due to night sweats or anxiety, but generalized hormone fluctuations can cause sleep disturbances too. So when you've got changes in sex hormones, you may notice that those other changes are impacting hormones created by your thyroid or adrenal hormones. So that definitely plays a role in whether or not you're lying awake at night staring at the ceiling, or if your body's able to snooze and dream. Sound sleepless soundly, excuse me. Also, loss of sleep interrupts appetite regulation. So increased ghrelin and decreased leptin. So the ghrelin and leptin topic here is the ghrelin. I like to think of that as the growling tummy. So if you have lack of sleep, and this really is for everyone, but when you don't sleep as well, you have ghrelin levels go up, which means you tend to crave things, more foods the next day. You tend to feel more hungry throughout the day. You tend to crave more carbohydrates because those are increasing the serotonin levels. So you often have a decreased leptin, which can lead to weight gain. So sleep is one of those topics that I often address with my clients very early on in their program, whether or not you're someone coming in for weight loss, getting stronger, being able to manage your diabetes, your menopause, or overall health for really anyone, male or female. Okay, to promote restful sleep. So limiting alcohol, this can compromise your liver function, dismissing or diminishing its ability to metabolize estrogens. So that's not often talked about enough. I'd say most of the time when we hear limiting alcohol, oh, okay, right, we know, let's limit our alcohol intake because it's number one, excess calories, not any nutrients that are adding value, and oftentimes are what is metabolized first. So what that means is it takes precedence over everything else because your body's really trying to metabolize it to get it out of your system. So the fact here that its ability to metabolize estrogens and diminishing ability is significant because it's going to impact your hormone levels and your mood and how you feel overall. Limiting caffeine at least 6 hours before bed, at least. Sometimes I've even had clients at least 12 hours before bed because they're really very sensitive, or you start to get more sensitive as time goes on. Trying a small serving of starchy carbohydrates. So this would be like whole food sources. So what we talked about before, and the quinoa or brown rice or sweet potatoes or any of those here in the evening at dinner, which can increase serotonin. Whole fruit, butternut squash are just some examples as well. And then avoiding protein, sugar, fats, beans, and liquids right before sleeping. Really, any meal we're trying to avoid right before sleeping because you want that time to digest your food without having it impact the quality of sleep, because it does definitely impact your sleep. Practice basic sleeping hygiene, so consistency, light, noise, relaxation, routine, temperature, stimulants, exercise, fullness. So when we're looking at this, we want to keep consistent with the room temperature, making sure that we're using a white noise machine, keeping the room really dark, keeping the room really dark, and then making sure that you're winding down in a way that is going to help you relax. Other hormonal conditions can affect sleep. So discussing any symptoms with your doctor or endocrinologist or your dietitian. I talk about this a lot with my clients, so it's really important to make sure that you are not just ignoring these symptoms. These are things to address, they're not to ignore. Okay, leading threats to women's health. Heart disease, cancer, stroke, osteoporosis, depression, autoimmune diseases, Alzheimer's disease, and diabetes. So what are some contributing lifestyle factors to these diseases? Alcohol and tobacco use, not getting those screenings and primary care that you need, not managing stress very well, limited sleep, limited physical activity, and nutrition. So we really want to make sure that we're really diving into each of these topics to make sure that you have an idea of what you can do to help prevent these diseases. All right, nutrition needs for women. This is the quote unquote meats and potatoes of this presentation. So puberty, right? This is where women start to develop unique nutritional requirements, and it doesn't end from there. It keeps continuously changing from there. So oftentimes when I hear people come to me and they're like, oh, Ashley, like I know how to eat. Like I've been eating the same way since I was a teenager. It's working well for me, fine. Okay, maybe you are at a healthy body weight for your age bracket, your height, your gender, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is healthy on the inside. So just because it looks one way on the outside doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting enough of the nutrients needed for your ever-changing body as you age. So with physical and hormonal changes, your nutritional needs continue to evolve, making it important that our diets evolve to meet those changing needs. So calories for women are usually less than men, but the vitamins and minerals are usually greater. The needs are greater for women than men, especially going through different life, um, different cycles. For example, going through pregnancy and then going through all these stages of puberty, perimenopause, and into menopause. All these stages of life are going to change your vitamin and mineral needs. Your water needs, I always start off with half your body weight in ounces as a general recommendation, but this also changes when you are exercising and sweating, and your needs are going to increase. Hormonal changes associated with menstruation, childbearing, and menopause means that women have a higher risk of anemia, weakened bones, and osteoporosis. And it means that there's a required intake or a higher requiring of calcium, iron, magnesium, vitamin D, folate, and omega-3. These are really, really important nutrients for women. So why are they important? How much is needed? And where do they come from? So calcium, got to get out of the picture here. Strong women. Calcium importance and recommendations. To build healthy bones and teeth, to keep women strong, regulate the heart's rhythm, and to ensure proper nervous system function. Some of these other things aren't always talked about, so it's often we hear build healthy bones, but it's nice to hear that there's other benefits of calcium too. Deficiency can lead to mood problems like irritability, anxiety, depression, sleep difficulties, and osteoporosis. Women are at a greater risk than men are of developing osteoporosis, definitely. So it's important to get plenty of calcium in combination with magnesium and vitamin D to support your bone health. So what are some recommendations? For adult women aged 19 to 50, about 1,000 milligrams per day. For women 50 plus, about 1,200. So you can see, again, the needs are going up as your age increases. So how do we achieve that? Calcium sources, again, green leafy vegetables, legumes, tofu, molasses, sardines, okra, perch, trout, Chinese cabbage, rhubarb, sesame seeds. These are all sources of calcium. Notice none of these are dairy related. We don't necessarily need to have that in our in your diet unless you enjoy it and it's something that feels good to you. Here are some other sources here on the right hand side you can see. So remembering before that the milligrams 1,200 for those over 51 and 1,000. So how it adds up, sesame seeds. Again, this is going to vary based on portion size here. This is just a fun picture. Okay, let's talk a little bit about iron and the importance and recommendations. Iron helps to create hemoglobin, and this is what carries oxygen to your blood. So it helps with creating healthy skin, hair, and nails, which often isn't talked about. Many people talk about biotin and helping with healthy skin, hair, and nails, but iron has an important role in that too. Due to menstruation and blood losses, women of childbearing age need more than twice the amount of iron that men do, so even more during pregnancy and breastfeeding. This is one of the most common deficiencies in women, so it's definitely something that is tested if you go to get your blood drawn. Deficiency can deplete you of your energy, leaving you feeling weak, exhausted. So if you feel out of breath, even after minimal physical activity, and you're not newly pregnant, then this can really impact your mood, your irritability, and difficulty to concentrate. So definitely, again, don't ignore these signs if you're feeling chronically fatigued, and even just because you're not sleeping well doesn't always mean that it's just due to the sleep. There could be other reasons here why you are chronically fatigued, and that can relate to iron. So what are the recommendations? If you're 19 to 50, 18 milligrams, 27 milligrams if you're pregnant, 9 if you are breastfeeding, and then women who are above age 51, it goes down. So you can see, it goes down as your age goes up. So this is one of those that's a little bit in reverse. And then iron supplementation is not really recommended for women over 50 because you can see here as it's going down. So what are some iron-rich sources? almonds, apricots, baked beans, dates, lima beans, kidney beans, raisins, brown rice, green leafy vegetables, broccoli, pumpkin seeds, tuna, flounder, chicken, meat, and pork. So just to be clear, one of the questions I always get is when you cook these foods, they actually make the iron more available. And also combination with a vitamin C rich source in iron, like for example, if you put citrus like lemon juice over broccoli and you eat that, it's going to, like if you cook the broccoli and then you put a little lemon juice over it, it's actually going to make the iron more bioavailable, easier to absorb in your body. Oh, so here, yeah, you can see consume iron-rich foods with vitamin C-rich source to enhance absorption. Okay, magnesium. Often we hear people say, oh my goodness, I'm having cramps in my calves. I can't get them to stop. What do I do? So magnesium is one of those overlooked, I would say, it's becoming more prevalent, but it's one of those overlooked minerals here that is really important for muscle and nerve function, blood sugar levels, blood pressure, making protein, bone and DNA development, and then energy production and hormone secretion. It also helps to enhance or increase calcium absorption from the blood into bone. So your body can't utilize calcium without magnesium. So they go hand in hand together. They're a team. Excessive consumption from supplements may result in diarrhea. So oftentimes if people are constipated, we talk about magnesium glycinate. You'll see forms of magnesium like magnesium citrate, and really that can actually cause more irritation in the gut. So magnesium glycinate is one of those you recommend. Impaired kidney function, low blood pressure, muscle weakness, cardiac arrest. So it's pretty serious if you go the other route and you're supplementing excessively. So you want to make sure you're kind of staying within limits. So again, another important reason to emphasize food intake. So 320 to 400 milligrams per day is recommended. And if we're looking at sources like legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, fruits, and avocado, those are rich in magnesium. Also some dark chocolate. That's usually a favorite. Dried coriander, ground flaxseed, again, another win for ground flaxseed, avocados. Okay, the importance of vitamin D. This is by far one of the most important and essential vitamins that is often overlooked and often under supplemented. And I am always of the mindset of a food first approach, but oftentimes when you go to your doctor's office and they say, oh, as long as you're above 30 nanograms per deciliter, you are good to go. But really that is just living, or existing, that's not really thriving. And when we're looking at more of the current recommendations of vitamin D is trying to really get those levels up to 50. For those who have autoimmune conditions, we're looking to get those up closer to 70. So really, vitamin D plays a crucial role in decreasing inflammation. Also, proper metabolism of calcium plays a role in that, helps to absorb or helps the body absorb needed for maintaining strong bones, muscle contractions, nerve health, immune system, blood pressure regulation, can help protect older women against osteoporosis, and then protects against infections by keeping your immune system healthy. So what are the recommendations? Now this I say, okay, 600 I use from food. Many times when I have clients who are in their ranges of 30, we talk about the supplementation of vitamin D and what that looks like in terms of IUs. And it's much, much more than 600. Sometimes some people, depend upon their levels, I have them on 10,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. Some people are at 50,000 one time per week. So again, dependent upon your state, that's something we evaluate to make sure that you are at the level that you need. Here's some food sources though. So not a food, but sunlight, fortified foods, mushrooms, salmon, mackerel, sardines, tuna, and eggs. So it's really not a long list. Most of these sources, are fortified here. This is fortified, meaning it's added to it. So again, in the Midwest, from February to November, 15 to 30 minutes of midday sun for 15 for those with lighter skin, 30 for darker, because the pigmentation, there's a decreased production when your skin is darker, so you need a little bit longer time, or 2,000 IU supplementation of vitamin D. Again, this is shy. This is on the shy side of what the standard, that's pretty standard amount, but that's a really baseline amount, and many times is really insufficient for what people need. And then again, from December to January, that supplementation. But again, sometimes it's much more. Sometimes it's 10,000, 5,000. Okay, folate importance and recommendations here. So this is important not just in stages of during like pregnancy and folate production and making sure that you're protecting your baby from spina bifida and other diseases, but it's also important for DNA production and cell division. So again, clearly you can see why it's important for when you are bearing child. Folate can greatly reduce the chance of neurological birth defects when taken before conception and during the first few weeks of pregnancy. Folate can also lower women's risk for heart disease and certain types of cancers. So now when we're talking about this in later life, folate can help your body manufacture estrogen during menopause. So again, folate here to the rescue, not just important for those earlier stages in life, but definitely important for the later stages. Not getting enough folate in your diet can also impact your mood, leaving you feeling irritable and fatigued, can affect your concentration, making you more susceptible to depression and headaches. So this is micrograms, 400 micrograms of folate or folic acid daily. Women who are pregnant should take 600 and those breastfeeding 500. See, it changes. I mean, even by 100, it changes based on where you're at in the cycle of life. So green leafy vegetables, asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, citrus fruits, black-eyed peas, spinach, great northern beans, whole grains, baked beans, green peas, avocado, peanuts, lettuce, tomato juice, bananas, papaya, organ meats. So just to name a few. So you can see there's quite a bit when it comes to folate. A lot less when we're talking about vitamin D, a lot more when we're talking about folate. Okay, omega-3 fatty acids, one of the most important sources for reducing inflammation, good for heart health, lowering triglycerides, regulating cholesterol, lowering blood pressure, preventing plaque buildup, and preventing blood clots. Also shown to help fight mental disorders like depression, anxiety, ADHD, reduces inflammation in the body, and can help manage autoimmune conditions. So this is a big one, very important supplement when we are dealing with autoimmune conditions. Unless you are eating fish on a regular basis, it's a great thing to supplement with. Lowering the risk of cancer and help support healthy bones and joints. And the recommendation here, women 19 and older, 1.1 gram per day. So it sounds like a small amount, but that's grams. So before we had been talking about micrograms or milligrams, this is grams. And then pregnant women, 1.4, breastfeeding women, 1.3, and then an older, that 1.3. So 250 to 500 milligrams of EPA, DHA combined. So we're looking at, the combination here of EPA and DHA, which again, going back to that omega-3 fats. So there's a difference between ALA, EPA, DHA when we're talking about plant sources and when we're talking about animal or fish-based sources. Okay, so at least 2 servings of fatty fish per week. That's wild-caught salmon, Atlantic mackerel, herring, lake trout, sardines, albacore tuna, anchovies, egg yolks, NATO. Incorporate, I'm going to start calling that tuna now. Tuna, get your tuna. Incorporate plant-based omega-3 regularly, like, okay, again, another claim to fame for flax seeds. So flax seeds, chia seeds, walnut, hemp hearts. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the most well-known topic, or I would say the most engaging topic that I hear from my clients, from my female clients all the time. So I like this little comment. Just when you get used to PMS, they tell you you've got perimenopause. So again, hormones and health, the role of estrogen is really to help maintain bone mass, cellular division, heart disease protection, and storage and distribution of body fat. So when you have an alteration or change in estrogen levels, it's going to impact where you're storing body fat. In the perimenopause transition, we've got 3 to 10 years. So that transitional stage can last that period of time before menopause actually occurs. So you can have a reduction in estrogen, a reduction, a slowdown in metabolism, and potentially an increase in weight and then risk of heart disease. So this is not, again, end all be all here. It's not to say this is your fate, you're doomed. This is to say, again, this is what is happening with hormonally speaking, and then we are coming back with solutions by combating and creating lifestyle changes to make sure that you are prepared for these scenarios. So, what are some of the effects of menopause on weight? Unexplained weight gain. I often hear, Ashley, all of a sudden my pants don't fit. I'm getting more fat around my midsection. The increased risk for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and premature death. Declining metabolism makes it difficult to maintain or lose, so we must create new habits. Again, this doesn't mean you're doomed. There is hope here. We have choices. We have ways that we can modify our habits and our actions to create change. So weight management, plan for your body's metabolic slowdown. So this is, again, a balanced diet. I talk to my clients specifically on what that looks like for each individual. It's different. It varies. Your needs are different. You are your own person. So again, it's very important to get that information from your dietitian. Increase intake of non-starchy vegetables. Stick to lean proteins 3 times per day. Eating your beans, so sparing it out, spreading it throughout the day. Choosing whole grains, incorporating a variety of healthy fats. And beware of health saboteurs, okay? So processed foods, grain-fed red meat, refined sugars, alcohol, and excess caffeine. You can see a theme here. Let's talk a little bit about exercise. So the importance of exercise for bone health, maintenance of lean body mass, and hormone regulation and weight management. When you are in the perimenopause state, this is where 30 minutes of activity per day is the recommendation. When you are in menopause, the recommendation is 60 minutes a day for 5 days a week. So your recommendations go up. Your need for amount of time to exercise goes up. And many times, I often see if you were an avid exerciser in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, and then you're going through menopause, I often see that those who have started a little bit earlier have a little bit easier transition when trying to maintain this 60 minutes, because maybe now you're retired, or maybe you have a little bit more time, you have more flexibility, so we're able to fit a little bit more of this in. Intentional exercise. Be intentional. Choose to do what you like and enjoy. Make it fun. Power walking, running, jogging, cycling, swimming, strength training. Hire a personal trainer. I absolutely love working with my clients one-on-one and personal training as well. And the experience that you have with your trainer, I have had clients for 10 plus years, and it can really be a great way to help motivate you to move your body in a healthy way and to, again, make it fun and interesting. Having an active lifestyle, take the stairs, walk or bike to work, sit less, move more. If you're someone, though, who is constantly on the go, never sits down, is always stressed and worried, has lots of anxiety, then we have a little bit of the opposite that needs to happen here. We need a little bit more calm and relaxation, meditation, deep breathing, de-stressing. Weight-bearing exercises like strength training, a minimum of 2 times per week. This is essential. This is important for bone density, that resistance training that we talked about earlier. And then stretching and yoga is important for flexibility and maintaining mobility. All right, the most important, managing stress. Chronic stress leads to hormonal dysfunction and high cortisol levels. So you can have an increase of blood sugar, you can have an increase in abdominal obesity, you can have an increase in your blood pressure, impaired immune system, you get sick more often, it lowers your sex hormones, so definitely not in the mood. And getting at least 30 minutes of parasympathetic activity each day is really the way to help combat and cope with these stressors. So what is parasympathetic activity? What the heck does that mean? You have your nervous system, which is your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. And your sympathetic is like the one that is on overdrive. If you're, again, how I described on the last slide, you are constantly anxious and you're stressed out and you're moving all the time and you never sit down and everything is like this, then we really need to take some deep breaths, sit in a chair for a second, and meditate and do some mind-body techniques for balancing out stress hormones. So what are ways to do that? Relaxation, breathing, meditation, imagery, and self-hypnosis. I like to do guided meditations or visualizations with my clients. And so sometimes even in a session, we'll go through some imagery and visualization to help put you in a space of relaxation to help your your mindset, your mental capability to handle and certain scenarios and situations, and your resilience towards stress. Exercise is a good one, prayer, and getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. So, in summary today, keep your body fat in a healthy range by performing lifestyle habit changes. Exercise at least 5 hours each week, including weight bearing activities as well as stress relieving activities. Consume plenty of whole plant foods like vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. And then limit the amounts of alcohol, caffeine, meat, fish, dairy, and eggs. Again, varying up those depending upon where you're at. Again, then another important conversation to have with your dietitian, because this varies per person as well. Some people do function better with eggs. Some people can't do dairy. Some people need more fish, and some people can't tolerate too high intakes of meat. So again, just based on you personally, that needs to be adjusted. Avoiding processed foods like smoking, added sugar, and salt. I don't know why smoking is not a processed food, but it is a processed drug. So put that in there. Not sure why. Stay hydrated with water. So important. Talk about it in every single PowerPoint presentation. I think I do. Water is essential to me and you. All right, managing stress and meditate. And that is your training for the day. So thanks so much for joining me today on your women's health and meditation menopause presentation. Hope you all enjoyed this. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm Ashley Anderson, registered dietitian and personal trainer over at Move Fully Nourished. Take care and have a great day.